showers or anything. I just say Clara.
Hi gang, so why am I with a towel on my head? I filmed yesterday my latest palette battle video. Long story short, I have a new microphone and I hadn't fully figured it out. So none of the audio was recording for the first two parts of my video. I'm gonna have to be doing a little bit of voiceover here and there, but I still wanted to film the intro to this. This is kind of a peek into my real life. Hair up, not glamorous in the slightest. In this video, I'm going to be pitting two palettes against each other. I first got the idea for this concept by watching Katelyn House. I will link her channel down below, please check her out. The general idea kind of speaks for itself. Two palettes go against each other, one on one eye, the other on the other eye, and we see which one does better in the end. So the two palettes I chose were the Viseart Editorial Brights Palette and the Melt Cosmetics Radioactive Palette. So as you can see, they do have very similar color stories, and that is the idea for round one, where all the battles are between palettes that have very similar color stories, and I tried to do very similar eye looks on each eye. As the palettes get eliminated, I will eventually have to sort of diverge my looks on each eye. And then at the end of this all, we will have a champion of palettes, at least for my collection. So one thing that came up during the application process of this is that this particular palette does have a white, and because of that, you can mix the individual shades with the white, or mix them with each other, and then you get a really pretty pastel shade. With the Melt Cosmetics Radioactive Palette that doesn't have white, it also doesn't have deep blues that like this one has. So yeah, there's just a little bit of difference, but I still tried to create very similar looks. I just wanted to share that Melt Cosmetic palettes are magnetic. Alright, so first off, this is the Editorial Brights palette from Viseart, and I'm taking a teal shade and placing that in my crease and bringing it towards the middle of the eye, especially on the crease area. And now I'm taking a primary blue shade and kind of trying to deepen up that area nearest to the lash line. Then I'm taking a yellow shade, the primary yellow shade, and packing that on the inner half of the eye. Because yellow and blue creates green, next up I'm going to take a green shade and help that transition along, make it a little bit more seamless. Next up, I'm mixing the green with the white to create this pastel shade. I just wanted to experiment, and I thought the shade looked really pretty as a swatch, so I decided to place that in the inner corner on top of the yellow. And now I'm taking the blue again and trying to blend it in so that the transition looks cleaner. Then I decided that I wanted a little bit more depth, so I took the darkest blue shade and yeah, just tried to define a wing. Taking that towards the lash line. Here's when I decided to take that pastel green shade kind of all the way in. Now I'm smoking out my lower lash line with a combination of blue and white to create this pastel shade. Right now I go out of a frame, I'm sorry for that, but I am placing a red shade in the inner tear duct just to give a little bit of a pop of color, a contrasting pop. Okay, so now we've moved on to the Melt Cosmetics eye. I'm taking a teal shade from the Radioactive palette, trying to do the similar kind of shape and shading as the Viseart side. Okay, so I'm packing it on. And as you can see, next up, I'm using this bright green. Like I said, the Melt Cosmetics palette doesn't have a white, so I couldn't create a pastel shade. So I just went with the bright electric green, kind of buffing it out with my blending brush. I wanted to point out that I felt the teal shade kind of fades a little bit after the initial application. Next up, I've decided to use a purple shade to better define the eyes because I didn't have a dark blue. And I actually like that effect, so I decided to mimic it on the Viseart side using the purple from the Viseart shade and creating a little bit more of a purple hued definition instead. So I was just kind of going back and forth trying to balance everything out, but with each side I used the respective palette. Okay gang, so this is the finished look. Once again, this side was done with the Viseart Editorial Brights Palette, and this side was done with the Melt Cosmetics Radioactive Palette. Let me zoom you in so that you can see more in detail the eyes. So, Editorial Brights. And here is the Radioactive palette. There we go. So I did add some very dramatic lashes, and I also did line my waterline with a lime green eye pencil. This is the Essence Longlasting eye pencil in the shade 32 Go Green. So that's what's in my waterline. I did the usual blusher, etc. And my lips, I used the shade Sasha from Lime Crime. It is very, very kind of bright and bold, and I feel very much like a parrot, a tropical parrot. I did use, you know, all sorts of shades on there. So yeah, I think it came out quite fun with my black top. It doesn't look too crazy, and I also did pair it with a lip that's not very bold in nature, so I think that kind of toned down the drama a little bit. Let me know in the comments below which palette you think won, just based on watching me apply the eyeshadows and, you know, the final visual result. I also would like to announce the winner of the previous eyeshadow palette battle. That was the Lila palette by Natasha Denona going against the Celestial Divinity palette by Pat McGrath. I will leave the formula of how I've been calculating the results, but this one I don't think I have to do much calculation because all the votes, including my own, went to Lila palette by Natasha Denona, simply because in the Celestial Divinity shade, there was one shade there that I used, which was a dark brown shade, and that seemed a bit patchy in application, and I spent a really long time trying to finesse it. It just took an extraordinary long while. To be perfectly frank, I prefer the color story of the Celestial Divinity. I think there is a lot more range in terms of light shades, medium shades, and deeper shades. With the Lila palette, it just seems to be very much mid-tone to deep. I actually just wish that the Lila palette had a wider range of depth. But regardless, the Lila palette won. I will announce the winner of this particular battle in my next palette battle. Usually I will try to upload it in a week. So you have about a week to leave a comment down below telling me which palette you think won. And yeah, so that's it for me. I will see you when I see you. Or you will see me when you see me.